no one in their worst nightmares ever imagines or sort of plans for a global pandemic. We're lucky in a way because I think our offer is destination. You know, we're not reliant on selling lots of beer. You know, it's the highest spend per head on the drinks. It's cocktail led.
Sure.
Cocktails have grown enormously since the pandemic. I've always naturally enjoyed being with people, and I feel very lucky because it's in hospitality. It encompasses so many passions, which is food, drink, travel, property, interior design. It's a people business, and so it is an amazing sector. There was this bar just there, and I thought, have we lost the plot? And I remember actually drinking a drinks brand. Because I met this drinks brand and sort of sold them this dream of Narnia, the secret bar.
Our eating habits are changing. We're demanding better dining experiences, and the food market has never been so competitive. Starting and succeeding with a food business is challenging, but some determined and passionate entrepreneurs are flourishing. These people have big dreams, big passion, and big drive. They are disruptors, change makers, and innovators. They see a positive future. Many say that food business is too risky. Some say that it has huge rewards. Are you up for the challenge? Well, Charlie, thanks for being on the show.
Oh,
I know you're a busy man. I know you've got a new opening this weekend as well.
Night.
Did you?
Yeah,
okay.
So I was there last night. Had the first customers into the London Gin Club, which felt great. Nice to see people other than builders in there.
Yeah.
And we just did some previews, and then next week we've opened the diaries. So it was good. It was a really lovely atmosphere. We actually just opened the doors last night to see what would happen.
Okay.
And a few people stumbled in, and the staff got used to making some drinks and running through the glass washers and all those things. No massive leaks or big disasters.
Yeah.
No, it's really excited to see that one develop actually.
Amazing. It must be great to, I guess, flip the mindset now and the kind of the vision towards the future. Obviously, as opposed to the last 18 months, like how was that experience and how did you get through it?
It's been incredibly tough. I think no one in their worst nightmares ever imagines or sort of plans for a global pandemic. It was never in our risk analysis. I think the very worst, we thought there might be a recession and a downturn in the economy, or you might have a licensing issue in a single site. But yeah, it was definitely the hardest year and a half of my life. I think the sector was obviously hit very, very hard. I think we're obviously more drink led. We don't have a big delivery element. We did do some cocktail deliveries, but we essentially went down for a long period to zero revenue. And it wasn't really until the 19th of July that we could trade all of our sites and operate at full capacities. But it's really nice. I feel like we're in recovery now. I feel like we're back looking at all the detail that we need to, and actually I love all the sourcing and stuff from Kempton Market for the sites and getting back into that. And it was just it felt really positive to have the Gin Club to sort of look forward to. And it was a site we saw pre-COVID. And it's like we really loved, and we kind of were about to do a deal, and then obviously couldn't. And actually moved. My business partner was kind of keeping the conversation alive at a point where I was very much just thinking, the world is going to end. Yeah. I'm very glad he did, and I think you really see centre of London coming back now. So every time I go into Soho or the centre of town, it's busier than it was the week before. So.
Absolutely. And how did you react initially? Because obviously you're a group with multiple brands, multiple locations, landlords, different teams of staff. Like, what did you focus on initially? Was it reducing costs and trying to survive, or?
Yeah, I think it's. I've got to be honest. We were in complete shock. Initially, and we had a bit of a canary in the coal mine. So in the middle of February, we started seeing some of our corporate business cancel. So we had, we do this event every year with a big American TV network, and they come over and they cancelled. And then we do some for other big media businesses. They have sort of 3-day conferences, and they hired out our venues for the evenings. And it involved people travelling from Asia, from America, and those things went early. And those was having going to have quite a big effect on us. That was recurring revenue that had been there for years. So we started seeing that, but our average consumer didn't really behave any differently until the weekend before the borrowers got up on that Monday and said, at 6 p.m. Do not go to bars, clubs, and sort of social venues. And the weekend before, we'd seen probably a 20% decline.
Okay.
But at that point, we realised we had to close. It wasn't responsible to be sending our staff in, and it was like, it's interesting. Something I think hasn't been spoken about a lot is, luckily, when that happened, sort of in the middle of March or early to middle of March, we hadn't got to the end of the quarter, because actually the end of the quarter is when all your rents are due, because you pay in advance, and your HMRC dues, so luckily that hadn't gone out. So it was just, it was pure, managing cash flow, managing costs, stopping direct debits, trying to reassure our staff. We didn't make any decisions until we heard these rumours about furlough, and I know, Kate Nichols did an amazing job pressing the government. Then pretty much everything went to hibernation.
Okay.
Staff went into furlough, and we kept a small team on. Someone from maintenance to keep the venues, ticking over in terms of that there weren't any kind of big leaks or disasters, and trying to keep up sort of a regularish communication. But it was like, it was really hard, because you couldn't really offer the staff the reassurance at that stage that you wanted to.
Yeah. There's so much uncertainty out there.
You wanted to put your arm around them and go, guys, everything's going to be absolutely fine. But I couldn't in good conscience say that, because you just, got to remember, this is pre-vaccine. I just didn't know how long this was going to be there. And then it was just working with our lender, getting a C-bill loan, working with our landlords. And I have to say, I think landlords get a really hard time, and get portrayed as villains a lot in this. Our landlords on the whole were really, really fair to us. Big institutions like Shaftesbury, like British Land, Legal and General, they behaved really, really well on the whole.
Okay.
They were very good, and I think they wanted us to survive and be the other end. We had a couple of independents who weren't so fair, but I think we were lucky in that sense.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of July the 4th, 2020, when we thought there was the big reopening, and at that stage we sort of thought, who's going to be around? Who's in the centre of London? You've got no theatres, no people on the offices, you've got no tourists. So we did open, and actually we didn't open everything at once. We only opened one venue on that first Saturday, which they sort of had dubbed Super Saturday. And actually we were pleasantly surprised. It was busier than we thought. People were travelling in. The demographic was certainly younger. There was no one over 50 there.
Okay.
And we sort of had, so everything started opening more from that period onwards. And then September, the restrictions started coming in. So first it was the rule of 6. Then it was the 10 p.m. curfew. Then it was, you had to eat a Scotch egg, with every drink. And, it got harder and harder. And actually, the government had this way of leaking things to the press the night before. And actually, I used to every night look on Twitter, and there's a hashtag called Tomorrow's Papers Today, and you can see tomorrow's front pages around 10:30. They get released in the evening. And you'd almost learn your fate through, what Matt Hancock had in store for you.
Yeah.
And I said to someone, you felt like almost a bull in a bull ring, and every restriction was like another spear in your back.
Okay.
And actually, there was some sort of comfort in eventually being locked down, because actually it became harder and harder. To be trading with all these rules, no households mixing. So obviously that was the other big one. And something like Bunga Bunga, your average party size is 15, 20. So rule of 6 is that was the first one to come in. But each one, no households mixing in London. Got a site in the city. People don't really go out in the city with their household.
Yeah.
They're at work. They go with friends.
Sure. Yeah.
It was a real challenge. But actually, I feel like when the vaccine was announced, and that was a good day in November. And I think when the Pfizer sort of trials of efficacy was way beyond what they thought, and then the sort of program was announced. I think we started to be able to see the light.
Sure.
As I said, the light at the end of the tunnel for once wasn't an oncoming train.
Yeah.
And then from April, they released the roadmap in February, and from April it was outside areas only, and we actually opened every outside area we had. I think we got 2 venues which literally have 12 seats, and then one in the city which has 100, and that did really, really well.
Okay.
But we saw from there was appetite, and it felt different.
Sure.
And when we opened inside from May the 17th, actually suddenly all the people in their 50s were there too. and sales, recovered a lot faster this time round.
Okay.
And I think we're lucky in a way, because I think our offer is destination. We're not reliant on selling lots of beer. It's a higher spend per head on the drinks. It's cocktail led.
Sure.
Cocktails have grown enormously since the pandemic. People have been at home. They want something they couldn't necessarily make at home.
Yeah.
And I think people are seeking out places, and we've never really relied as a group on footfall. We've always been, we always say right postcode, wrong street. We don't really get people passing down Bruton Lane and in Mayfair to finding the original Mr. Fogg's. They find us on the Google map through our digital marketing. They hear about us through press and word of mouth. So
sure.
I think people are making much more considered choices now, which is really interesting. I think people are really, if they're going to make a plan, they want it to be to be a good place, which feels a bit different, and which actually they can then share, on their social media.
Sure.
I always think about there was a pub sort of opposite our office in Victoria, and it was just, it was literally the closest pub to us. With sticky floors, warm beer, but we always used to pile in there cheap drinks, but it was just outside the door. But if I was to assemble people and say, guys, we're going to meet here, they look at me like I was mad.
Yeah.
And I think actually that's the reality in this post-COVID world, is I think actually places which have relied on purely location, purely being next to the tube station, next to the office, are going to struggle more.
Yeah. I want to come back to life post-COVID and business post-COVID. I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think you've done incredibly well, and clearly it's taken so much resilience just to get through the last 18 months. And the fact that you're bouncing back, I think it's really testament to you. But let's go back to the early days. I'd be interested to know, was hospitality and business something that was always in you, or it's developed kind of later on in life?
I think it's, I come from, my father's a doctor. I don't come from a family of, with sort of history in business, but I think I was always, as a kid, very entrepreneurial. I was always 3 or 4 drawing cartoons and trying to sell them to the neighbours, and we always had a little, I set up a little sort of cafe on the road selling cupcakes that I had made, and so I was always thinking like that. I think hospitality was something that I always liked. Hosting. I've always naturally enjoyed being with people, and I feel very lucky because it's in hospitality. It encompasses so many passions, which is food, drink, travel, property, interior design. It's a people business, and so it is an amazing sector. But I sort of fell into it in a way slightly by accident. I had a year out between school and uni. And started doing all these various, club nights in London as a way to fund my travels, and they did really well. And the natural evolution then was to eventually sort of have our own place.
Okay.
We got frustrated with purely filling up other people's places. Okay.
So at that early stage in uni, when you were running and promoting those club nights, did you have a vision in mind, kind of 5-10 year plan or something, or was it just kind of step by step, or was it just passion kind of driving you towards something?
Absolutely no plan. I'd love to say, we had this plan, and when we even set up our first, actual bar, our first Inception Group lease, and we signed in November 2008 and opened in February 2009. But there was no plan. Definitely not. We would just, we saw gaps in the markets and we're trying to create places that we wanted to go to and that we thought were interesting and different, and actually the business kept evolving, and I think it's probably reopened 2 or 3 sites, without really and then it was like, right, okay, we need to now focus, we need to start looking at some of the brands, because I remember I used to feel a little bit schizophrenic because we used to go from sort of marketing meetings between Bart's, which sort of a speakeasy, and 1980s Club Maggie's, Bunga Bunga, our kind of kitsch over the top Italian pizzeria, and then into Victorian England with Mr. Fogg's, and I think whilst we like all the sites to be different, I think we then started focusing actually, we need to replicate, it's not replicate, but have some brands with brand guidelines that we can, creating a collection, not a chain, but
but it's taking step by step, really.
So I think that's really when more of a plan developed.
Okay, interesting. I know you started with kits initially in 2007, and that was an operating management agreement with Sloane Square Hotel.
So that was that was just, we've been running all these nights and these club nights and filling them and coming up with a theme. And we got, we knew how to get people into a place and putting in various parties and events. But, I think that we had some various situations where the club owners would change their mind, and unbeknownst to us, there was this one night where they'd actually booked in their own party of 100, and then we had 100 people of ours on the street. So Duncan and I actually sort of said to each other, Duncan and I met through the club promoting days and been business partners ever since. And, we just said, we've got to try and have more control. And we heard about this hotel being developed, and it had a basement which we knew used to be a bar. And we said to them, what are you doing to this basement? What are you doing? What are you going to turn it back into a bar? They said, no, we're in the business of sleep. This is going to be housekeeper storage.
Okay.
And we said, well, you can make a lot more money, And I think unbeknown to them, we got a sound engineer into the space who kind of drew up this whole plan about putting in a lead-lined ceiling, and actually it could be completely insulated from the hotel. And we also agreed, came up with this proposal that, if anyone, was woken up and, they could have their room refunded from our P&L. So it kind of gave them assurances with that.
Okay.
And then it was, we took them around various nightclubs, and these guys were in their 70s, and I think being to a nightclub, and it was a slightly awkward experience. But, I think they then, kind of started thinking about this was a, potentially a good idea. And so we set up Kits, which was a nightclub, did really well. We soft launched it. It was just before, it was December 2006, but probably opened in 2007. But it wasn't really Inception Group. It wasn't hugely differential. I think it was more constrained by what we had to create within that hotel space.
Okay. So how did you build up the traction and the exposure at that stage, 2007? So social media, I guess, was just slowly developing?
Yeah, starting to a bit with Facebook, but I think it was just more through promoting, our kind of, getting people together and, promote like we'd done with other people's places, but this was our own.
Sure.
And, we didn't own it, but we were perceived like owners. And we learned a lot from these hoteliers because they were very, seasoned, experienced guys, and they're big into the budgeting processes and all that sort of thing. And that's definitely fashioned a lot of how our business is currently operated. Because as a promoter, you literally just kind of pile people into a club, and then you think, well, vodka's cost 15 quid, and we're selling it for whatever, a bottle, we must be making money. But of course, running a business is so much more. Your rent, your payroll, your rates. So it was a shock to the system initially, and if I'm honest, we were thrown absolutely into the deep end and hadn't got a clue. But we learned on the job pretty quickly. And I think from then it became sort of increasingly clear that we were taking a very small piece of the pie, and we wanted to set something up which was really our own. So we signed our first lease and opened Baths, which really was the start of Inception Group.
Okay.
In 2009.
Okay. Tell us about Duncan and that partnership. And firstly, was it a conscious decision that you wanted to find a partner to launch something, or was it just something that naturally and organically just developed?
It naturally and organically developed. Actually, okay. I think what works really well with Duncan and I is we have slightly. He's much more practical than I am. He's probably more financially and numbers driven.
Yeah.
But I think we were basically, I was running a Tuesday night at the club. He was running a Thursday night, and that everything's going to we were slight arch rivals, and I was always trying to outdo his Thursday night and the Tuesday, and he was trying to do the same on his night.
Okay.
And then the week before Christmas, I booked the Wednesday through the owner, knowing that everything's busy in London the week before Christmas, and he booked it through the manager. And then they didn't want to choose between us, so they said work together.
Uh-huh.
And Duncan turned up with a team, kind of clicking people in and out, and checking that the money received was the right amount. Something I'd never thought about doing.
Yeah.
And I sort of said, well, maybe we should do, some bigger venues. And we started promoting, we did some big nights at the Ministry of Sound and stuff. So it was.
You just clicked into place, kind of as a team.
Yeah, we did more and more, and I think it's really good. I think if you're finding a business partner, it makes sense to try and find someone who's possibly good at the things you're not, or you don't want to find. I think the times you see business partnerships go wrong, I think, is when two people are too similar going to business together. But all these years later, I mean, it's it's worked very, very well.
Okay.
I think we have a lot of mutual respect.
Sure, very good. So Bart's then launched 2009. I know it was in an apartment building, and you developed a speakeasy concept, which I guess made sense in terms of the space. But how did that all come about?
Well, so I'd seen this speakeasy concept in the US, Please Don't Tell, and there was this amazing sort of thing. You went into a phone kiosk and you picked up a receiver, and then the back opened, you're in the secret bar. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then weirdly, Duncan got a call from this guy who was always trying to sell him something. He would have some, like some oil painting. He's just a bit of a wheeler dealer.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I've heard about this residence bar for sale in Chelsea Cloisters. It turned out this bar had been on the market for 1.5 years, and no one wanted it, and no one could make a success of it because it was literally on a very sleepy street in a very sleepy apartment building. And there was just this residence bar, but it did have a license. It allowed you to bring people in externally. And we just suddenly thought, actually, this could almost be, perfect. This is sort of could be this secret bar. And we had to personally guarantee that lease. So, if the business had gone under,
a bit of a risk.
We'd have been personally liable. And there were definitely a couple of moments, I think, before we opened that you had that worry and that panic. I remember just walking through the building. There was not a soul walking down the street. The cleaners were there polishing the floor. They looked like they were sort of moments from death.
Yeah.
And there was this bar just there, and I thought, crikey, have we lost the plot? And I remember actually bringing a drinks brand, because I met this drinks brand and sort of sold them this dream of Narnia, the secret bar that you walk through, and I think in their heads they sort of they were kind of thinking about the Great Gatsby and had all these visions.
So this was the first speakeasy in London at the time, so there was very little kind of benchmarks or reference points.
And then I showed them the site before we'd done the deal, before we'd done the decor, before we'd kind of changed it, and they just went from being very excited to just being absolutely silent.
Wow!
And just didn't get it at all, but. Yeah, we just did it on an absolute. We didn't have much money to do it. We did the entire initial investment was 30 grand. We did it from car boot sales, Duncan over there, Kempton Market, eBay, buying a load of stuff. Worked with a friend who's a graffiti artist to do the front of the bar. We had to keep the bar top and everything. But it made it really fun and different. And I think it was interesting. I think it was that time where it was post sort of credit crunch, and I think that. Pre-credit crunch, everyone had been talking about that £3 million refurb or that £5 million refurb, and actually, post credit crunch, it was more about doing things inexpensively. So it wasn't about being flash and overstated, and I think people like the fact it was almost like quite reminiscent of the crash of '29, in the States, and how the speakeasy, through Prohibition, movement launched then. So it sort of felt quite timely, and actually if people were going to be drinking or having a party, it almost felt like it needed to be kind of away from public eye.
Absolutely.
And we did it with a really fun way, and it's like, all our drinks were in teapots, or all our sort of sharing cocktails, and I now cringe at that now. It's so generic, but at the time it was completely new. And our kind of exposed light bulbs, again, that look was really new.
Okay.
And it was just, because we were buying teapots from car boot sales for £1 each, so it's actually, for us, it was just a cheaper way of, rather than buying jugs from a catalogue.
Okay.
I think with bars, it was interesting. We did I remember we looked at 10 bars within a kind of 10-minute walk, and I printed out pictures of them, put them all on a sheet of paper, and I said to a few people, where's that? And no one said, those are 10 different places. And everyone was ordering the same decor from the same catalogue.
Wow.
And we just did it, if you put Bart's on the page, it completely pinged out.
Okay. So did you have a design inspiration from somewhere, like in the States or something, or it was just out of necessity you had to go to bargain shops and so on? Or
it was complete necessity.
Was it?
Yeah, and it was funny. It was like, I think a good example, I probably had a bit more of a traditional idea. Duncan had an idea of, something a bit more contemporary, and the kind of mishmash worked. And there's the great US restaurateur Danny Meyer. He always says that creating a concept's like writing music. The notes are predetermined, but the order you put them in creates something unique. And I think it was an idea is quite often an amalgamation of ideas. And there was a great little restaurant down in Devon that Duncan's had been to called the Winking Prawn, and they had this fancy dress trunk, and that was one of the things we put in, really inexpensive. And I remember one of the first reviews we had. We got a load of press, and Twitter was taking off, so there was this real buzz about it. But they said we never gave up the address, and our tagline was London's worst kept secret.
Okay.
And they said, we tried to find it. We ended up in the kitchen at the local Chinese restaurant. We eventually got it in there. I saw the fancy dress trunk. I thought, how stupid. An hour later, I was drinking a martini dressed as a penguin. But it's, I think it was that kind of icebreaker. And I think when you've got no money to spend, you have to think about everything. I mean, we had a key card lock on the door. I remember ringing the hotel company. There was a company who supplied these, and they got very excited about their order. Less excited when the order was for one. And that was on the door. And then regulars got rewarded with a key card.
Okay.
And they'd be a real regular. You got your own tank in above the bar.
Wow.
But there was no membership for sale or anything. Drinks prices we started, really inexpensively. They have slowly creeped up over the years, but no, just buzz. The buzz for Bart's just was pretty instant. And I remember Duncan and I turning up on the first Saturday and couldn't get a table, and that was like great.
Amazing. That was fantastic. It was such an instant success as well.
Yeah.
Would you say there's kind of one area of focus that you really concentrated on at those early days? Like, was it the experience or the service or the product, or like one thing that really stood out to kind of fuel that success?
Yeah, I think all elements are really important.
Yeah.
I think that, our mission statement from day one was, to create unique and memorable experiences. And experience has always been front and centre. And it's funny, I feel like, experience wasn't such a key buzzword then, and now again it feels slightly overused. So you have to keep reminding people, that has been our mission statement since 2009. But the experience was key. Yeah. A big word for us is hospitality, not service. I think it's service you can get from a vending machine. Service is how you get A to B, and hospitality is a way that you make people feel. And I think that is sort of big, a big philosophy within our staff. It was just actually a lot of the staff, had never served a drink, didn't really have that drinks knowledge, but were lovely, smiley, friendly people. And I think actually that's the most important thing. You can kind of teach someone to carry a tray, but you can't teach someone to smile and have that personality. So
absolutely,
that was fundamental. And I think sort of fun and escapism. I think we felt like so many places were just a bit dry and taking themselves too seriously. And you went to a cocktail bar at the bar, and you felt like you were back at school being lectured about what you can and can't do and drink, and they just all took themselves a bit too seriously. Whereas I think certainly product's important, and especially with our brands like Mr. Fogg's, but ultimately people just they're choosing to come to you to escape. And that's really important to remember.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, it's making people feel good. Yeah. And I guess post-recession, it's giving people a space and an environment to do that.
Yeah, I think Danny Meyer, again, to quote him again, but I really do think he gets things right. And his book "Setting the Table" we give to managers when they start. But you can go to a restaurant and everything can technically be perfect, that you leave feeling quite empty. And I think actually, the lovely thing, especially now where people have got so used to staying at home, and they can have restaurant quality, food delivered to them, service.
Yeah.
But what they can't get is they can't get hospitality at home.
Sure.
And that is something fundamental. And it's just, as a member of the waiting staff, you can really make someone's evening.
Yeah.
And it's lovely to see that. That interaction.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
So what kind of challenges did you have? I'm sure there was numerous in the early days.
So many challenges, from getting kind of robbed by one of our maintenance staff at the start, not realizing. I mean, we just naively putting in a licensing application in Bart's within the building within the first few months without consulting the residents before, which led to so many objections.
I'm sure.
Front page Evening Standard news story. But we were green, and you learn through experience, and
sure.
I think you do learn from your mistakes, and we're still making them, but probably less of them, and it's just trying not to make the same ones again.
And again, it's the perseverance, so you just keep going and learning and developing.
Just learning every day. I think we keep keep learning. But it's a tough business, hospitality, and you're dealing with lots of different people across the week, and we're constantly learning. But it's not a straight, easy path. It was lots and lots of bumps along the way.
Sure. Very good. So off the back of the success of Bart's, then you launched Maggie's a year later.
Yeah.
Why?
I look back on that and think it was quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you continued going along that route, pretty much 1 a year almost.
Yeah.
So why develop a new brand and a new concept, and how did that all come about?
So we'd had a nightclub before with Kits. Our bar, Bart's, had a 1 o'clock license after we actually got that licensing application somehow, and got that extension. So we took it on as midnight. We got a 1 o'clock, and then we had lots of people wanting to go to a club, and they sort of thought we'd been promoting clubs before, so we thought we had to have one. And we saw this old bar called Bondi, and it was a bit of an awkward space, and it had this big sort of VIP room, and it was sort of like a bit of a corridor. We just had this idea, actually, you could turn the VIP room into the loos and knock it all out and probably double the size of the space. And this idea came to do an 80s club, and it was just like, how can we be a bit different again? Everyone's playing the same music. Again, you go to every club, same chart music. There's no real point of difference. They all kind of gain that same interior. And I think something we always try to do with our interiors is they're quite, they're timeless. So you're not having to, because actually if you create something that looks like it's 2021, in 5 years' time, when it's 2026, you're going to be outdated. Whereas, Maggie's is like a time capsule. We always say there was an avalanche, and you dug it up, you would say this is, almost, it's been here since the 80s.
Okay.
And we had a lot of fun with it. Rubik's Cube tables, really kitsch, all the big sort of 80s stars and memorabilia all over the walls. Sort of a big, grotesque fish tank. It was fun and silly, and really over garnished cocktails. The menu was in a viewfinder. Umbrellas, sparklers, waitresses and waiters on roller skates, and literally played 80s music. And then this amazing DJ who was with us from the start, and he decided he moved back to Spain, but he came back and was there when we reopened on the 19th, so with us for 11 years. And he was a DJ from the 80s, and he only played 80s music.
Okay.
And it was just, it's such a great decade. And I've got to be honest, at the time we thought, is this 80s music, is that going to continue forever?
Yeah.
And it has, and people just...
It's just a fun time.
It's fun, it's been amazing to see that business reopen, because obviously it was mothballed for, well over a year.
Sure.
But, and again, that really, really works. It's quite near Bart's, so people used to leave Bart's and come on.
Yeah.
And, we the name is obviously quite tongue-in-cheek, but we were trying to think of a name which was sort of... because there's so many people famous at the beginning of the 80s, or the late 80s, or people like Madonna who were as big in the 90s, whereas Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister 79 to 90, so she encapsulates that whole decade. And we thought there was just something quite amusing about naming it after her, and we used her spitting image puppet as our logo.
Okay, very interesting. I'm intrigued to understand a bit more about your developing the idea stage and putting flesh to the bones in terms of the concept. So it sounds like, I think you've said a couple of times, where you're kind of looking at the industry or sector or a particular part of it, and you almost see a problem or something that could be developed further. Is that how it works? And then do you have like a reference point, i.e. the 80s or something, where you kind of benchmark against or develop something based on that? Or how does that whole process work?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like... definitely. I think all of the above, really. Actually.
Okay.
So, I think with Bunga Bunga, it was definitely a frustration from us that there weren't many fun places you could go to in London for dinner. Everywhere you went to for dinner, you had to go to sort of somewhere, maybe a bit serious for dinner, and then you had to go on to a bar or a club, later on. Whereas we tried to create this one-stop shop, somewhere you could go for drinks, have dinner, and stay for the night.
Okay.
And we always used to say people used to drink, eat, and go to the theatre, and now people wanted theatre whilst they ate and drank. So it was kind of having that show and entertainment and live music. So that was through a gap in the market, and then lots of ideas. It's an amalgamation, and we have some brilliantly creative people who are part of our team. Some who've been with us since the start, and we put lots of different things down on paper, and one idea quite often can lead to another, and you don't adopt that idea, but maybe that doesn't work. But what if we did this? And And I think actually a reference point in time really does help. So like Mr. Fogg's is based on all that Victorian era and travel. And there's lots you can do within that. And also it's fiction. So we can make up characters and we can have fun. Maggie's, it's like that period. So the reference point is, the 80s hairstyles, the shoulder pads, what did cocktails look in that period?
Sure.
So there's there's lots of different ways, and sometimes the ideas are an amalgamation. So like when we created Cahoots, I really wanted to do, because it was an underground bar, and I just said, look, what we've always tried to do is turn a disadvantage into an advantage. So Bart's being a speakeasy bar hidden away. The previous people were all trying to create signs on the main road saying bar inside. We're like, no, it's hidden. So let's play to those strengths and work with that. We'll work with that.
Okay.
In the same way, an underground bar, you get a lot of people who have an underground bar, they're putting in fake, lighting to make it look like it's street level. It's actually what has to be underground on an underground tube station. So let's put in a tube. And Duncan really wanted to do this 1940s concept. We ended up doing 1940s underground tube station.
Okay.
So there's two ideas sort of amalgamated, and lots of things happen that way, and it's great. Now, we do so much in-house in terms of design and stuff, and, the nicest thing is some of the best ideas, or a lot of the best ideas now, aren't ours, which is great.
Okay.
Just surrounded by brilliantly creative people.
Amazing. And you mentioned experience, obviously, quite a lot, and it's obviously a core part of your concept and business.
Yeah.
And obviously that word is thrown around a lot everywhere in society in general, I think. And it's clear that you have a lot of attention to detail in terms of all the elements that you're focusing on and developing. There's also this growth of the experiential gaming sector, which seems to be booming at the moment and continuing to grow.
Competitive socializing.
So how do you, stay ahead of that and stand out in that environment? And what's your opinion of this gaming sector as well?
I think it's great. I mean, I think whilst during the pandemic, I wished at times we had something we could send on the back of a scooter, and we didn't. We did our cocktail delivery, and we tried to make that experiential. So you scanned a QR code, and it sort of it was being filmed in the venue, and it took you through how to make it. But I think look, experience is key. I think the generation now, millennials and younger, it's people. It's less about material things. It's like must do rather than must have. And I think also there is that one-upmanship through social media. People kind of living vicariously through these channels.
Sure.
I think I think competitive socializing is really interesting. I think you can overdo it, and there's sort of those early adopters like Bounce, who are doing ping pong really early, and then there's people who are a bit late to the party. It's an area we might consider, but within the realms of our brand. It's quite fun on Mr. Fogg's to think about whiff waff rather than in croquet, and there's definitely elements of it.
Sure.
But I think it's exciting, and I think actually for the high street to survive, it's going to have to change. And I think people now they're shopping online, habits have changed, and to actually pull people to a physical space. Experience is going to be fundamental in making them do that, and I think even retail is going to have to become much more experiential. If you're going to go and buy kitchen equipment, you almost need to go in, and there needs to be chef displays on how it works and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even like Hamley's kids store is an experience. You go there, it always has been. There's people doing demos and things, and it's fun, and it's you get a lot more from that than you would by shopping online. It's not. You can't completely replicate that online, and I think that's going to be a fundamental shift in the coming years.
Absolutely, and again, I think, as you said, it's really how you make people feel and creating that positive space for people. Really.
And I think it's what's fundamental too with all of this is really believing in your concept, and you can't be embarrassed and you can't be half-hearted. You've got to go full hog, and Robin, our ops director, who's brilliant, is. He is very, he looks at Victorian posture, and within Mr. Fogg's, and it's sort of part of the training of when people see a mobile phone, it's what's that? And, the little touches.
Yeah.
But those details really matter, and in each Mr. Fogg's there's different name plaques of different members of the Fogg family, and actually one of the nicest reviews we ever had was every time I go, I notice something different, and it's probably only 10% you notice some of those small things, but it really matters, and I think actually the staff notice.
Okay.
But it's really believing in it, and really, because there's a very fine line with the concept between Disney and what we feel we do, and you kind of got to walk that tightrope really carefully.
Sure, makes sense. So tell us about then your growth strategy. Obviously, we have 12 sites now, just opened.
Yeah.
Firstly, in terms of location, so you're London-centric, obviously. I guess that's a very conscious decision.
Yeah.
Why take that approach? And also, in terms of the brands, so you have multiple Mr. Fogg's as an example, but multiple brands.
Yeah.
So why take that approach?
Well, I think, as I said at the beginning, there wasn't really a plan. There was like gaps in the market, like this would be great. There's no speakeasy, we want to create this fun restaurant, we want to create this different sort of club. And I think now, there is more of a strategy, and it's very much creating collections, not chains. So hope is by going, there's 6 Mr. Fogg's, but the hope is by going to one, you want to visit them all, not by going to one, you've done them all. So that is very much key to philosophy. London, because we know it really, really well. Grew up here, and that's kind of we know where our core market is currently. We definitely will go beyond London at some point. But I think in terms of strategy with sites, it was like we could only get the sites at the beginning that nobody else wanted. I mean, we had no track record, we had no history, we didn't have great covenants. We couldn't afford big rents. So, literally, I mean, Bart's, when we first signed it, was on a £10,000 a year rent.
Wow.
I remember our lawyer ringing and saying,
there's a mistake.
He said per year, you mean per month?
You're missing a zero.
No, that is per year. And similarly, Maggie's was a low rent, and Bunga Bunga, and it was sort of it was right, as I said, right postcode, wrong street, kind of by necessity because it's all we could get. But we then created these real destinations and really overtraded these spaces. And then I think as time's gone on, we've luckily some great landlords I think have offered us some more prime sites. Obviously, our rent as a percentage of turnover has increased over the years. It was very, very small. I think for the first 3 years we were like 1.8%,
Wow.
which is tiny.
Wow.
When you consider that probably an industry norm is near 10.
Absolutely. And obviously business rates follow that as well, so it's another big
so
chunk.
it was good, and it'd be lovely if that continued. But I think we've been offered more and more prime, what we just call prime sites, and so I think we're not scared of destination sites, but actually it's nice to have a mixture.
Makes sense. And how is the business doing now? So post COVID, and how do you see the market changing? It's kind of constantly changing week on week at the moment.
I think I mean for now we are the sales have recovered really, really well. I think better than we expected. I think international tourism hopefully is going to start. I think from this month, October, the UAE is opening up. Obviously, America has started to open up, and I think that will really help. And it's tourism comes in lots of shapes and forms, but the international business traveller was quite key to certain brands of ours.
Sure.
People were seeing moving into the office more, and I think even from April the 12th, we were having very strong weekends because people were travelling in, but actually the early weekdays were quieter, and those are growing. So I think we're all slightly nervous about whether we get through this winter. I think actually there'll be a lot more confidence. We need to deliver Christmas. Christmas is a very, very important trading period for us as a company. So we didn't have a Christmas last year. That was a very painful period, and we need to deliver. We need to deliver a good Christmas. And I think if we can get through this winter without too harsh restrictions or another lockdown, I think we'll feel a lot more confident. But I think things are going to change. Working from home is here to stay. Culturally, there's been a shift, but I think we're well placed because we are destination, and I think the days that people are in the office, they'll make plans to socialise more. Because I think that's something as a company we're going to be doing, and I think that's an element people really missed. I remember in May bumping into some people in one of our sites. I said, "Oh, you're back in the office," and he's with me, and they're like, "No, we're all coming in once a week, just on their own back to see each other and have those after work drinks." So I think it's I think it's going to be tough for those businesses like Pret a Manger, which need volume, and and if the footfall's down, their revenue's down. But I think that their strategy is probably going to be moving to nearer where people live rather than where people work.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Be interested to get your thoughts on the staffing issue at the moment. Obviously, it's pretty severe. I think you have over 400 staff. Is that right?
We did improvement. I think we're approaching that again now. I mean, look, it's a huge challenge. I'm not a fan of Brexit, and I think that was always going to cause a lot of trouble. Obviously, COVID has expedited issues that we were going to have. I think 700,000 EU nationals left London, and also you've got to remember, for a sector that was shut, people of course are going to transition to different sectors. Look, I think it's really tough. Recruitment used to be a thing we didn't really have to think about. As you know, as an operator, it was always friends of your staff who just kept coming. There was a constant flow of people walking through the door, and there isn't that. And I know the government's talking a lot about investing in the UK workforce, and I think long term, yes, I would like to see that happen. But I think actually a lot of work needs to go in for people to see that hospitality is a great career choice. But that's taking time. There's going to be years before that bears fruit. And look, learning development is something we're as a company going to really invest in, and really progressing people within the organisation and showing them there is a career path.
Okay.
This isn't a sort of a job. This isn't something in between things. This is possibly a career.
Sure.
But I really hope. I think short term, I think the company are going to have to bring in some sort of visa system. It's just going to be too much of a handbrake.
Sure.
If they don't.
Sure. That's changing a culture really, which takes a lot of time and a perception of a sector. It's going to take years.
It's going to take years. And I think sometimes we all pat ourselves on the back and say London, we've done well. We're the leading place to eat or drink. So much of that is the influence of people from Europe and French chefs and Italian bartenders, and we have a lot to thank our European neighbours for the success of London and the UK's hospitality sector. Sure.
Well, it sounds like it's positive and exciting times for you going forward now. Where do you see the group going over the next few years? Do you have set growth plans, or are you taking it a step at a time at the moment?
No, I think we do. I mean, I think for us, we're very excited. I think we really feel like we've only just started. I think it was we've emerged from the crisis sort of bruised and battered, but not defeated. And I think with an even stronger resolve. And I think it's I think in London there's such an opportunity, especially now in this post-COVID time, to pick up many more sites. There are better deals. I think our focus is certainly going to be London for the short term. But we think we can prove that actually there can be two different Fogs concepts opposite each other in the centre of town, with a different twist.
Okay.
So there's so many parts of London where we haven't gone into, and I think we would certainly explore other UK cities or cities internationally.
Okay.
But I think for the next 2 or 3 years, probably London is going to be our focus. We launched the gin club last night, and we've got some more things bubbling. So, I think barring any more lockdowns and COVID being in the rearview mirror, I think we feel pretty bullish about the years ahead.
Amazing, exciting times.
Yeah.
So, if you had one piece of advice for somebody potentially with an idea and looking to start a hospitality or a bar business, anything in particular that you'd recommend?
I would say start really small. I'm sometimes amazed by people, their first business, they want to take a 10,000 square foot unit with a huge rent, and maybe when I say start small, do it as a pop-up, have a street food van, get a following, start your Instagram account. Be simple, try and do 5 things well rather than 20 things averagely. Know who your customer is going to be. When we even started the first few venues, we profiled the exact sort of people that would go. And I think you really need to know who you're selling to, and I think believe in it. And I think if you don't believe in what you're doing, you're not going to get other people to believe in it. So really believe in what you're offering. Okay, good advice. Well, congratulations, Charlie. I think it's an amazing story and super successful. And I wish you the best of luck in the future. Thanks, Peter. Thank you. Thanks very much. Cheers. Great. Cheers.